I would like to encourage each of you to seek these candidates out after they get through speaking and after we, dismiss, because that's the only way that you're going to know for yourself how they stand. You can go on Facebook, you can get online, but just because it's on the computer doesn't mean it's exactly right. So I encourage you guys to seek them out and speak with them individually. Okay, now we will go to Superintendent of Public Instruction, Linda Murphy.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. I'm back home tonight, Strong City, Cheyenne. Graduated from Cheyenne High School. My mother grew up in Strong City. My dad in Hammond, Oklahoma. So I have lots of cousins still around, no more aunts and uncles that are on the earth with us, but they've gone on above. I love Cheyenne. It's a beautiful community. It's a beautiful place, and it's just very peaceful to come back and drive through the hills. I brought a friend with me tonight, Jordan Green from Blackwell. He grew up his early years in Sayre. His mom and dad, Phil and Julie Green, you may know them. And my husband Dan is with me. He's here on the camera. Dan is from Guthrie. His grandpa came to Oklahoma in the land run and did some of the building downtown Guthrie. He was a building contractor, so we love Oklahoma. And I'm here tonight to just let you know that I'm running for State Superintendent of Public Instruction, State Superintendent of Schools, State Superintendent of Education. We call it a lot of things. On the ballot it says Public Instruction, which is kind of a long title. Need to get that out there. I'll be on the ballot on Tuesday, a Republican. So if you're not a Republican and I get through Tuesday, vote for me in November, please. I have a website. It's votelindamurphy.com. And if you go to this card, if you want to take one home, you can remember at the bottom, votelindamurphy.com. It's got my policy page, my biography, press release, a lot of interviews, radio interviews, newspaper, etc. To tell you more about me. But I'll just tell you some things here tonight in the time that we have. I'm running because I believe we need new leadership in the State Department of Ed. We need a person that cares about rural education, rural schools and communities, as well as the problems and the issues that we have in big cities. I live in Edmond now. I've lived in Broken Arrow for a number of years. So I've been near Tulsa. I was in Tulsa County and I've seen that system up close. I taught school. I'm certified, or I have been certified. I didn't continue it after 30 years. I was certified by the State Department of Ed. In special education and in K through 8 elementary education. I taught school in Caddo County and Hinton and Lokiba. I taught school in Avant, north of Tulsa. So I really kind of know what it's like in a lot of different educational settings. And that's important. When you get to the state capitol, I don't know if you've ever heard it, but there's kind of a rural and urban divide up there a lot of times about what is better for rural areas and what's better for the big cities. And in education, we need to make sure that we don't impose any more state laws that are one size fits all to make everybody conform to a new process or idea that doesn't work in every school. I think we need local control first. So on my card you'll see LEARN. L is for local control. We need local control where parents, teachers, and educators work together. I know you do that in Cheyenne, and it may seem strange to say that, but it isn't really happening everywhere. And there are plans and programs that often get mandated from the federal government or from the state that would take away that local control. So I'm just committing that I am working for local control. We recently had standards that came actually through the National Governors Association and the Federal Department of Education that were called Common Core state standards. And I don't know how far they were implemented here, but where they were implemented into a pretty deep level of, getting them in place, we found that the math was not good, concrete math skills. It wasn't like you learned to add and subtract, multiply and divide like we all learned, where children could walk out of the classroom and go to the store with mom and dad and learn how to add 2 and 2 and 4 plus 6 in their head. It wasn't like that. It was processes on paper that you had to do a certain way with like 10 steps to get a 2-digit solution. Ridiculous ideas. They weren't created by educators. In fact, I've met one of the people that wrote those standards on the national level. There's a lot I could talk about there, but I'll just say this. I was a person that helped lead getting that out of our state law. I worked with Gus Blackwell, state representative from Laverne area up northwest, Woodward, Laverne area, and Jason Nelson in Edmond, Oklahoma City area. And we came together, and some people wanted to just delay it, but I was one that said, no, we need to get it out of our law because it was mandated. So in a few years, we would have had just a lot of children graduating, having come through those math processes, which weren't going to work. And it also required children that were real young to have to start learning things that their minds weren't ready to learn. I don't know if you've heard the term, but developmentally inappropriate. In other words, they're just too little to be pushing things on that level. And so, you know, we don't make kids walk early or crawl early or roll over early because those skills have to develop. We can't push them. We can arrange conditions so they can do that, you know, make sure they've got the room to roll around and to stand up and pull up safely and all that, but we don't make it happen quicker. And developmentally, there are things that have to happen for children to learn in the classroom, their developmental skills. One thing that I did after I taught in public school, I worked in a private clinical setting in Oklahoma City, working with children that had visually related learning problems. And these children, and some adults as well, had trouble with their eyes starting and stopping accurately, or working together as a team, or staying focused. Now they passed the test, Carolyn knows, right? And a lot of other folks here in Cheyenne, I know I had students that I have worked with from this area and all over western Oklahoma. In fact, yesterday in Lawton, I spoke to the Republican Women's Club there, and one of my students had contacted me when he saw I was running for this office, and he said, how much can I give to your campaign? What's the maximum? He's a businessman, very successful now in Lawton. So he met me there yesterday and handed me a check for $2,700. And it, you know, it does make y'all get a little emotional here. But you know, this is a student that you affect their lives. And he was able to do that, and he was happy to do that. Because that boy could not read. When he was 9 years old, he couldn't read. And he would hide under his bed. He felt like he was stupid. And so he did not have the control of his eyes to read accurately. He would lose his place so much he couldn't get the comprehension. So there are things like this developmentally that we need to know and understand. These children had 20/20 eyesight. That just means you can see clear at 20 feet. It doesn't mean that your eyes work accurately and precisely when you're sitting down at the desk to move your eyes from word to word. So you've got 6 muscles around each eye. So that's another part of my background, and that developmental understanding is important because a lot of these new mandates have pushed out understanding children and how they need to grow up naturally. And sometimes we need to do certain things to help them. My aunt was a kindergarten teacher in Elk City for 30 years, Wilma Johnson. And her daughter, Jennifer Johnson Sanders, is a kindergarten teacher in Merritt. And you know, I was around my Aunt Wilma, and she had the sand trays and the water bins and things. I loved to go to her house when I was little. She always had the blocks. And she told me years later, her son, my cousin, Wendell, she said, Wendell had these visual problems you're working with, Linda, but we didn't know what that was. And she was a wonderful teacher, but she helped him learn to read patiently. He became a nuclear physicist for Westinghouse and still is. Brilliant. But these developmental skills and understanding how children learn and when there are problems, what we can do about that. So that's something I bring to this office that we haven't had there. special education costs a lot of money. And in a lot of school districts, a lot of children with a lot of special needs have been put into the regular classroom. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have mainstreaming when a child can do that, and it's beneficial for them and for the class to work together and so forth, and there's a time for that. But in some classes, I've got special ed teachers around the state that tell me they have children in their class that need to be diapered, they need to be fed. I mean, we're talking medical, severe, special needs that are not being met. And they can't do that in a regular classroom. You've got to be able to teach all of the students. So these are some of the areas that I've got some unique experience in. E on the card is education excellence, and we get education excellence by working with children one at a time. We don't get a one-size-fits-all answer to fit down and mandate. You know, I keep saying that because I'm really tired of that. We had outcomes-based education in the early 90s, and I ran against Sandy Garrett for state superintendent then, and that was the main issue, was the outcomes-based education. Sandy Garrett was the state superintendent, and we had OBE, outcomes-based education, which was Common Core's cousin early in the 90s, coming from the Clinton administration, and it was really controlling the standards, and it was controlling the way children are taught in the classroom. And I'm saying this, we need to let teachers teach. There are teachers who know how to teach, we need to let them teach. There was a recent article in the Tulsa World that said that most of the teachers in the Tulsa district which have left the classroom have left not because of pay, although pay is an issue, and we must solve that, and we must have good competitive pay for teachers. Absolutely. And in fact, I'm jumping ahead to R, return money to the classroom. That's R on my list, and the materials they need. But this article pointed out, and they interviewed a number of teachers that had left the classroom because of the required processes that were being forced in that they had to comply with, where they couldn't teach like they knew they needed to teach. So again, these things sound pretty simple, and you've got a lot of the right things going on here. But it's not true everywhere. And sometimes the bigger the system is, the worse it is, because parents have less of a voice, and teachers have less of a voice if you have a very, very big district. So education excellence, A is academic standards. We have new rewritten standards, but they're not the best. We can do better than that, and along with that, the testing is not aligned. Every time I talk with teachers that are using the testing now for the last 2 years, the scores have been low, they say you're absolutely right. The testing is not aligned. We've got nationalized testing. It should be from the standards that we have, but it isn't. So that needs to change. And R, return money to the classroom. There's a lot of waste, I know, in the State Department of Ed. It needs to be a service agency and not a agency that's always pushing an agenda from outside. We need to provide help to the teachers and the administrators in the schools across the state. N is now, it's time to do it now. And I did not agree, our current state superintendent, I don't know if you know this, but she was charged with 5 felonies in Oklahoma County. And the case was not taken to the hearing, but the district attorney said that he is still investigating, he has further information, and that he is not done. That's a quote in several publications where he told the press that. He did not clear anyone. And the issue was a dark fund where big contributions were brought in for her first campaign when she was elected. So Joy Hoffmeister was elected, over $300,000 that's part of the felony case that is still under investigation. $150,000 of that came from the OEA union. Now, you can belong to whatever group you want to as a teacher, but we shouldn't have any outside entity that has that kind of influence in an office. So that's my position. Vote for me next Tuesday if you're a Republican. If you're not, remember me in November if I'm there. Thank you very much.